Another day, another banger. Today we'll be diving into the complete Terminator movie timeline. This video will feature all 6 Terminator movies in chronological order, which you can find in the description below. Without further ado, make sure to sit back, relax, and as always enjoy the video. The Terminator begins in Los Angeles 2029 AD, where a spacecraft is seen flying amongst many other machineries. They all fire at people with one objective in mind: to end the human race. Going back to the past in 1984, a truck driver is doing his job when an electricity field comes out of nowhere, causing him to run off. Soon enough, a Terminator T-800 model appears and stares at his surroundings. We then see some punks on the street attempting to mess around with the Terminator and stupidly pull out knives on it, but are quickly apprehended and killed. Elsewhere, the same electricity field opens up in a dark alley when a man named Kyle Reese appears naked. Cops immediately pull up on him and chase him down. But Kyle makes his way through the dark alley and attacks the officer to ask him for the date and quickly hurries off with the officer's gun. With the rest searching for him in a clothes shop, they shine their flashlights and find him, but the man is too athletic and manages to get out. He steals a shotgun out of one of the cop cars and makes his way onto the street to just blend in with the crowd and go undetected. He soon discovers a phone book and rips out a specific page. In the morning, a lady is seen riding her bike and enjoying the beautiful day. Upon arrival at work, we learn this woman is Sarah Connor. In the meantime, the Terminator smashes through a window and steals a car. Soon arriving at a gun shop, the owner shows him a variety of weapons and is proud with what he has. Unfortunately for him, the Terminator loads a gun and kills the owner. He then quickly makes his way to a phone book and also looks for the same name, Sarah Connor. Going to the first name in the phone book, he is greeted by a lady who is ruthlessly gunned down. Later at the diner Sarah works at, she watches the news inform the world of the killing. Meanwhile, Kyle also decides to steal a car and gets a flashback about the time they were at war. We see him and his team being shot at by large machines as he throws a grenade to destroy the threat. His friend then arrives to pick him up as another ship starts firing at them and flips their car. Coming back to his senses, Kyle drives off slowly and remembers the war. Finishing work in the meantime, Sarah receives a call which sounds like she is being threatened, but it just turns out to be her friend just playing around. At the cop shop, we see Officer Traxler investigating the dead girl's case. After getting dressed, Sarah's date calls her to cancel the dinner plans and leaves her by herself. She instead goes on her bike and notices Kyle following her in his car. Officer Traxler is then met by the press, who have many questions, which leaves the department stressing for answers. Eating her dinner, Sarah hears the news about the women who are specifically named Sarah Connor being killed, leaving our Sarah to speculate about what is actually happening. Rushing to the phone book, she notices her name in it, which makes her leave in a hurry. As she walks alone, she once again notices Kyle following her, which scares her into entering a club. Rushing to the phone, she tries to contact the police station but isn't successful, as we see the Terminator has arrived at his next target. Inside, we see Sarah's friend dancing to her music, unaware of the threat, before being jump-scared by Sarah's lizard. Unfortunately for her partner, he is attacked by the Terminator, and unable to deal with his strength, his head is put through a wall. Ginger is then targeted and killed by the T-800. Simultaneously, Sarah calls the house and tells Ginger she thinks someone's following her whilst the Terminator listens. He begins to go through her things, finding her notes and identity card. Officer Traxler manages to get into contact with Sarah and discusses what she needs to do. Arriving at the club quickly, the Terminator searches for Sarah, and sitting around, she comes into eye contact with Kyle. The Terminator then spots her and comes towards her when Kyle sees this and opens fire to save Sarah. With the T-800 getting back up, he returns fire in the club to try and kill Kyle. Finding Sarah, he tries killing her too, but once again is shot by Kyle, who begins to escape with Sarah. Whilst running, the Terminator begins his chase in hot pursuit and jumps on the car they are in. Cops arrive on scene calling it in, and the Terminator steals their car to resume the chase. Still driving like crazy, Kyle tries to check on Sarah, but she panics at everything happening to her. He informs her he is there to protect her, and that he is from the future, while trying to explain that the man chasing them is a machine. The cops soon catch up to them, and Kyle gets crafty and evades them while continuing to tell Sarah about the Terminator. She eventually tries running away but is immediately stopped as he yells at her so she can understand the danger she is in. Meanwhile, the Terminator is still looking for the duo as the pair jump into another car, with Kyle telling Sarah that the Terminator is also from the future. Explaining a nuclear war is impending, it will wipe out all mankind due to the existence of the machines like the Terminator. He shows her the mark from the future, proving what it holds, and tells her that her unborn son was a hero, giving them hope. The Terminator then arrives in the parking garage and opens fire on Kyle and Sarah. Another chase ensues between them as more shots are fired. Jumping on the freeway, the Terminator is persistent in his chase and unwilling to give up. Causing an accident, the cops arrive on the scene and apprehend Sarah and Kyle before taking them back to the station. Traxler then informs Sarah of Ginger's death and brings a doctor to help them determine if Kyle is crazy. In the meantime, escaping the police, the Terminator is seen with an eye missing. He tries to fix himself up and we get to see what's under his skin. Back at the station, Kyle is questioned and the doctor there tries to understand how he knows about the future. With the Terminator adjusting his eye, his real eye is revealed, and it seems sunglasses are the best thing to hide it right now. Still being questioned, the officers laugh at Kyle and are unable to believe his story, with Sarah also watching. Traxler tells her to rest up and not to worry as she is safe inside the police station. Simultaneously, the Terminator arrives at the station asking of her whereabouts. He gets turned down to see her and immediately drives his car through the place before opening fire on everyone. Sarah hears the commotion and gets scared whilst the officers try and shoot back at the Terminator, who is unstoppable. Kyle uses this distraction to attack a guard and free himself as Sarah hides underneath a table. The T-800 continues killing the cops, and armed with 2 assault rifles, he manages to kill Traxler. Finding Sarah, Kyle makes another escape with her and gets to see the mayhem the Terminator has caused. However, the Terminator sees this and is ready for a rematch. During the same night, Kyle and Sarah break down due to lack of petrol and push the car off the road. They make their way on foot, hiding in a dark place, and Kyle tries to warm her up. She also notices he's wounded by one of the bullets and begins trying to patch him up, whilst also discussing her son's existence in the near future. Freaking out, Sarah wants nothing to do with the future, but Kyle brings her a message from her son, calming her down. They begin to have flashbacks of when Kyle was at war fighting against the machines. He courageously leads his team in the battles, showing us how life was or will be for the whole mankind. Opening a picture, we see Sarah's face and is interrupted by the future Terminator, who attacks their base, killing his men and the children that are there. Sarah's picture is burnt due to the Terminator's ruthless act of gunning them down. The next morning, Sarah wakes up with Kyle still with her, beginning their journey as they start walking. On the other hand, the Terminator reads her notes and is disturbed by the cleaner asking him questions, leading him to be sworn at before walking out armed to hunt. Meanwhile, Sarah and Kyle find a room to hide out in, happy that she can rest a bit whilst Kyle goes for a walk. She makes a call to her mum, telling her the hotel room and number, only to see the Terminator on the other end of the line. Unaware of the trouble, the pair goes through the shopping items, which teaches Sarah how to make a bomb. Lying down in bed, Sarah asks Kyle more questions as he stares out the window, watching for the Terminator to turn up. They begin talking once more about her son in detail, making Sarah cry knowing about what the future holds. In the meantime, the Terminator rides his bike and arrives at the targeted hotel to shoot inside Kyle's room, but notices they're driving off inside of a car. Kyle drives as fast as he can while being shot at, causing the pair to switch and Kyle to throw the handmade grenades they made at their assailant. He is shot in the process though, which allows the Terminator to catch up and cause a major collision. Still unfazed, he gets up and is run over by a truck driver. The driver is immediately killed and the T-800 hijacks the man's truck. He starts driving it into the duo and prepares to crash it when his targets manage to escape just in time. Running away, he catches up and, almost running Sarah over, he is blown up by a massive explosion caused by Kyle. Sarah stares in horror at the fire as she notices the Terminator burning and finally dead. Approaching, she sees the mess and Kyle appears to hug Sarah, finally ecstatic they're safe. Their happiness is short-lived when the T-800 stands back up in his metal form, striking fear into them knowing he can't be killed. They try to escape once again while the machine chases them to complete his mission. Kyle then smartly activates all machines inside a warehouse but falls down. Sarah tries with all her might to help him get up and run, but the Terminator catches up. Confused by the machinery around it though, the T-800 is unable to track them, caused by the sounds in the warehouse. Sarah and Kyle sneak around the place trying to get to safety but are met by the machine, whose presence and physique is frightening, causing them to back up slowly. Kyle tries protecting Sarah and hits the Terminator with a pole but is overpowered by the strength it has. Although that's the case, Kyle sticks a bomb in him and finally blows up the machine. Sarah cries in agony due to the item that pierced her and attempts to crawl towards Kyle, who is dead and sacrificed his life for hers. Angrily enough, the Terminator also crawls towards her with a last effort to complete the task. Sarah tries to get away from the Terminator, who is right behind her, and upon finding a little cage, she locks him in and presses a button, causing the equipment to squash the Terminator's head, finally terminating her enemy. She problematically shakes rapidly at the sight of its arm though, and is carried away by the paramedics, with Kyle being placed in a body bag. The next day, Sarah is seen driving herself and making tapes for her future son. She pulls up at a gas station and we see she is pregnant. Continuing to talk to her future son, she explains to him about how heroic Kyle was and the sacrifices he made for her. A young kid then snaps a picture of her. Asking for money, Sarah realizes this is the same picture Kyle had in the future. She then drives off towards a nice place as everything is finally over for the time being. Terminator Judgment Day begins in Los Angeles, 2029 AD, where we see the skeletons of people in an abandoned Earth. The existence of mankind was wiped out as we hear a voice explaining the war against machines. We see an army of men fighting against the machines in an all-out battle, seeing the firepower that the machines poses. A man is seen walking while we hear Sarah talk, telling us this is John, her son, telling us about a protector sent to help him. We see all of the chaos that the machines caused due to nuclear war, and that they wiped out every single person, as a Terminator emerges from the fire strong as ever. In the present time, a truck drives away, and an electric field is shown only to see the Terminator emerge from it looking around to see where he is. Inside a bar, bikers see the man come in with no clothes, shocked at what's happening. He approaches a biker, demanding to have his clothes and motorcycle. The bikers laugh in his face and put out their cigar on his flesh, but are met with anger as he begins to bash them one by one, harming them viciously. The remaining one takes off in fear, while he confronts the boss, taking his gun and motorcycle keys off him. The Terminator steps out of the bar looking like a soldier and jumps on the bike, but is confronted by the bar owner, who aims his gun at him. Unfazed, the Terminator takes his gun and glasses before riding off in style onto the streets. In another place, electricity is seen again by an officer who calls it in as he proceeds to check out the place. He shines his light with gun in hand, confused at the sight, and is attacked from behind by another man who is the T-1000. Wasting no time, he searches up John Connor's name, finding out his address. The next day, we see a woman talking to John, trying to get his attention, but is ignored as she complains to her husband about his behavior. These people are his foster parents and are ignored by John, who rides away with his friend on his bike. At the state hospital, a woman is seen training in her room with doctors discussing her file to find out this woman is Sarah Connor. They approach her cautiously due to the crazy antics she's pulled. Entering her room, they try and give her medicine, but ruthlessly begin beating on her when she denies, forcing her to take it. The T-1000 arrives at the foster parents' house, asking questions of John's whereabouts and getting a photo of him to know what he looks like. Having fun, John is playing around with stolen cards, attempting to withdraw money, showing us the skills he has. His friend pulls out Sarah's photo, which is the same one Kyle, his dad, had, but explains he isn't a fan of his mum's before continuing his ride, and is noticed by the Terminator, who is also riding. Having flashbacks, Sarah sees Kyle again, who asks about John, explaining to her that she needs to protect him. He tries to pick her up, telling her to fight for their son's life before leaving her as she tries to chase him down. Sarah runs in the hallway, opening a door only to see a bunch of kids playing around before she screams due to an explosion. In the meantime, Sarah is seen on tape talking to doctors, explaining the dreams she keeps on having about the future. Funny enough, it is Sarah who watches her own interview, spectating how bizarre she was acting. Dr. Silberman has a deep conversation with her, telling her she's improved and that she deserves to be in minimum security as she has other plans in mind. In a lab someplace else, we see two men conversing about their latest development. A door is opened leading to a secure facility, where we see the hand of the Terminator. Still trying to convince her doctor, he is skeptical to allow Sarah to be placed in minimum security due to her history of trying to escape. He denies her transfer, causing her to leap at him, angry that she isn't there for John. Meanwhile, John still rides his bike whilst the Terminator tries and catches up to him. On the other hand, the T-1000 is also spotted asking kids about him. Unaware of the danger, John and his friend play at the arcade with both the Terminator and T-1000 closing in on finding him. They continue playing as the machines keep searching, but the T-1000 encounters his friend, who informs John to run. Running away, John bumps into the Terminator, who pulls out a shotgun. Fortunately enough, the Terminator is now his protector, and him and the T-1000 get into a shootout. He is shot down, but his body heals, and they begin fighting with their hands before being thrown through a window. John gets on his bike, attempting to get away, but the machine runs right behind him and robs a truck to keep up with John. The young kid is skillful on the bike, managing to get away, and is shocked when the truck flies onto his path, still in pursuit. Right behind, the Terminator is hot on their tail, whilst John continues riding like crazy before the T-1000 is shot at by his protector. Fitting through tight spaces, the T-1000 doesn't give up his chase, determined to kill him. Simultaneously, the Terminator becomes airborne, landing his bike, giving him an edge slightly, and manages to get John onto his bike before shooting the truck's tires, successfully causing a massive accident and explosion. They ride off, although we see the machine walk out unharmed whilst John demands answers, confused at what's happening. He knows about the Terminators, realizing his mum was telling the truth, and is intrigued, touching and feeling the build of the Terminator. Back at the crime scene, officers clean up the scene as the pair discuss the T-1000, explaining it is an upgrade and much more advanced than he is. They arrive at the phone booth, calling the foster parents, checking up on their well-being. His mother says the wrong dog's named, making them hang up, and we see why, due to the T-1000 taking the shape of the mum killing the father. They keep talking, telling us the machine can imitate people, and can also create metallic items with its hands. At the house, the T-1000 shows no mercy, killing the dog before entering John's room to find some clues as to his whereabouts. He carefully goes around the room, finding his secret belongings containing pictures. In the meantime, Sarah is shown photos of the Terminator, saying his picture came up again, trying to get answers out of her. However, she is quick enough to slide a paperclip towards herself. John begins talking about his mother, upset he didn't believe her, and now she's stuck in a state hospital. The Terminator stops John from trying to save his mother and attracts attention with his screaming before he lets go. He figures out the Terminator must follow his command, making him bash two men, almost killing them before he is stopped by John. He tries and negotiates with the Terminator, telling him he must not kill, and their next mission is to save his mother. Unfortunately for them, the T-1000 arrives first, still posed as an officer, easily passing through security checks. Inside, Sarah is strapped to her bed acting like she's asleep waiting for him to leave. Once he leaves, she quickly uses the clip to try and free herself and is successful, except the T-1000 is getting closer. With the men going home, Sarah picks at the door planning her release, as one guard walks around unaware that the machine has blended in with the floor, imitating his shape before killing him. Breaking free, Sarah bashes the nurse who had been giving her a hard time, dragging him into her room, locking him in there as she makes her way through the hallways. She moves swiftly, bashing Dr. Silberman and his man, threatening the doctor. The Terminator and John arrive at the facility and kneecap the guard to open the gates and ride into the parking lot. Determined on escaping, Sarah forces the guards to open the doors using the doctor as a hostage but is pounced on, and this causes her to run off and find her own way out. Sarah finds an elevator and sees the Terminator, forcing her to panic and run away before being tackled by the nurses. The Terminator protects her by bashing them, reuniting mother and son as she's shocked that he is now a good guy protecting them. Noticing the T-1000, the group begin running, while the Terminator attempts to slow him down but isn't successful as their assailant uses his hands to make knives and stab into the elevator. The trio manage to escape and steal a police car and speed away, while being hunted by the Terminator, who is shot at multiple times. The T-1000 manages to latch onto the car, smashing the back window to get in, but the Terminator blows him off the car and successfully evade his chase. After the chase, Sarah hugs John and lectures him about taking risks and to never put himself in that situation again. Arriving at a spot, they park the car and attend to Sarah's wounds and to the Terminator's, whilst also being questioned by John, who seems to take a liking to him. She opens his head, discovering the machine underneath and taking out his chip, which leaves him unable to function. Sarah attempts to smash it and is quickly stopped by her son, who scolds her on damaging his friend, making her rethink her decision. The next morning, they steal a vehicle and get out of the city to avoid the T-1000. In the car, John teaches the Terminator how to talk and respond to humans, really bonding with him. Stopping at the gas station, he analyzes on how to smile before eating their food and changing the oil in his car. Kids playing around lead John to say humankind is going to lose, making him sad. Jumping back into the car, the Terminator explains the cyber system, clarifying what the future holds and how Skynet, a big company, plays a major role due to the man we had seen in the lab earlier, Miles Dyson. Someplace else, we see Miles and his wife discussing work, leading her to speak out, reminding him he promised to take his kids out. He explains the work to her. Although she disagrees, she accepts him for who he is, whilst his kids also come to them. Stopping at another destination, Sarah calls out to a man who pops out armed until he notices her. The hostility vanishes when they greet each other, talking and reminiscing about the old days between them. Sarah has a hidden stash house, filled with every weapon a man can dream of, leaving the Terminator happy. She informs Enrique to stay safe until this is all over, looking out for an old friend. Excited with their discoveries, they play with the guns and arm themselves while they bond some more until they find a massive gun. They then work on the car together, mentioning Judgment Day and more valuable information his mom had told him. He mentions Kyle, who is his father, remembering the stories about him, but the conversation is cut short once they enjoy each other's company some more. Sarah watches this and is happy to see her son has a protector. She plays with her knife, watching the people around her having fun with one another, which makes her cry, remembering Kyle and the time she had. Closing her eyes, she has the same dream of the kids at the playground and her screaming and her old self with John, only to be met with a horrific scene of the nuclear explosion that will happen if the machines win the war. Coming back to her senses, she sees carved letters in the table saying "No fate," making her mad. Arming herself with weapons and entering her car, Sarah drives off, leaving John and the Terminator behind. They come to the conclusion that Sarah is out to get Miles Dyson, quickly making them go after her, angry his mum could do such a thing. The same night, Sarah arrives at Miles' house, prepared to stop the war once she spots Miles in her sight. A red dot appears on his back as she prepares to change the future and misses due to his son distracting him. She shoots rapidly into the house, attempting to assassinate him. Sarah walks up to him, clipping him in the shoulder, but hesitates to finish it when his wife and kid watch her point the gun at him. She stares at him, crying, contemplating on what to do before coming to a decision, realizing what a monster she's become. Arriving, John and the Terminator check up on the family and Sarah hugs her son, relieved she had him. The Terminator shows Miles who he really is, cutting his skin, revealing his arm, leaving them scared. After everything calms down, they sit at the table, telling Miles how he's responsible for the death of all of mankind. Sarah tells him he is the reason the bomb is created in the first place, but is stopped by her son. They agree to quit Skynet to change the future for the better, revealing the chip from the first Terminator is stored at the lab, which infuriates Sarah. Agreeing to take them there, they quickly make their way into the lab, pointing their weapons at security to go up. Another guard walks around looking for his partner. Noticing him tied up, he triggers the alarm. Miles' card access is denied. Not sure on what to do, John steps up, trying to open it. Another door is locked but is blown open by the Terminator, who gives them gas masks to wear before entering the place. En route, the T-1000 comes to Miles' house. Going through his items, he hears the radio call in, naming Sarah as a person of interest at the Skynet building. In the meantime, the group begins their hard work destroying all the files along with Miles, who smashes his years of work. A fleet of officers arrive armed with weapons along with SWAT and air support ready to apprehend the group. Using his magic, John gets into the system, but notices the chopper flying ahead with the convoy of cops. They make bombs for the sole purpose of destroying the whole building whilst Terminator gets ready to fight the police. He comes face to face with them, opening fire with his machine gun, making them flee for their lives. He shows them mercy because of John, but makes it clear he is his protector, blowing up their vehicles before leaving satisfied with his work. Meanwhile, John and Miles enter the facility where the Terminator parts are stored, getting the chip they need. SWAT, fed up with this, make an entrance into the building armed with assault rifles. The group prepares to leave, unaware of SWAT, who shoot Miles and open fire on Sarah. She doesn't hesitate to make a move for it, and then saved by the Terminator, who leads the way to their exit strategy. SWAT moves in, noticing the explosions, and Miles, who has the detonator in hand, leading them to fall back in a hurry. The building blows up just as planned, destroying all the hard work Miles had done, whilst the T-1000 simultaneously rocks up also. SWAT shoots gas at the group, which angers the Terminator, who bravely walks towards them although he is being shot at and hit multiple times. He begins kneecapping them, eliminating any threat to the Connor family, before going outside to shoot gas canisters at the police officers. Hijacking the SWAT truck, he drives it into the lobby, picking up the mum and son, driving off victorious until the T-1000 spots this. Crazily enough, he jumps onto the chopper, stealing it, GTA style, following the trio. They notice the chopper coming in and begin firing at each other, determined to finish each other off. The T-1000 follows closely, piercing Sarah with his bullets, causing them both to crash, having a major accident. The Terminator immediately spots his pursuer driving a truck again, so they rush to hop in another car, evading the persistent machine. The truck closes in, ramming into them, as he has no other goal in mind but to kill them. Taking over the wheel, John drives while the Terminator shoots in hope he slows him down a little. Jumping onto the truck, he makes the T-1000 swerve and lose his wheels, causing him to crash. Getting back up, he is frozen due to the spillage, which gives the Terminator the chance to shoot him, blowing him to smithereens. John approaches and sees the machine regenerating due to the heat, giving them a bit of time to get ready and carry Sarah, who is wounded. Time up and the machine follows behind, whilst the Terminator tries to find cover for them, coming to a factory working with molten metal. Turning around, he instructs the two to leave so he can handle business, which he does as they get into a fist fight, throwing each other around. The Terminator's arm is crushed, giving the T-1000 time to go and find John. Knowing this, the Terminator destroys his arm, but the machine has already found them, and Sarah sends John to safety. She shoots her attacker in the face, fearless of what stands in her way, but is stabbed by him, asking her to call John to him. The Terminator stabs him, and another fight ensues between the two, but as we can tell, the T-1000 is clearly years ahead, smashing the Terminator's face multiple times. Falling to the ground, he attempts to crawl to his gun, but is stabbed through the back, sending electric waves around him. Getting her own gun, Sarah reloads whilst John hides, although due to our surprise, the Terminator gets up again. John hears his mother calling to him, and he sees her, but also sees another Sarah, who opens fire, revealing the original as she shoots him over and over. Unable to do anything against him, they see the Terminator aiming his gun and shooting at the T-1000, causing him to blow up and fall into the molten metal, finally destroying the enemy, who looked unstoppable. They watch in disbelief as it screams in agony before disappearing into nothing. John helps him up as they look down at the molten steel and throw the chip and cyborg hand from the original Terminator. He points to his head, indicating he must also sacrifice himself so that John is safe. John puts up a fight, disagreeing with his choices, crying that his friend is going to die, and hugs him tightly. Sarah also shakes his hand and soon enough lowers him into the molten steel and is saddened that he must go. The Terminator goes under slowly, but not before giving them a thumbs up that everything will be okay. Meanwhile, in the future, the existence of mankind is still here as their lives were all saved. We see Sarah narrating her story, staring at an older John and his kids, happy with how life has turned out. She expresses her gratitude for the Terminator who made it all possible. Terminator Rise of the Machines begins with a massive nuclear explosion wiping out everyone. A man rides his bike whilst John narrates, explaining the war between man and machines, showing us how they were victorious once mankind had vanished. John is seen working, reminiscing about the past, telling us he lives off the grid due to safety precautions. He has no one, as he has dreams about the danger mankind will be in. A spacecraft is seen hovering before flying above, showing us the war zone and collateral damage everyone suffered. A group of Terminators are seen shooting at them, looking very lethal and unstoppable. John soon wakes up in a random place and begins riding, although he falls off his bike due to an animal. Downtown somewhere, we get another visitor from the future. A female this time though. She walks towards a random car and kills a woman before driving her vehicle. Dialing something, we see she has a target list but draws some attention to herself by taking a red light. Pulling over, this woman is TX model, and once the officer approaches, she stares at his gun. The next day, a couple shop when Kate Brewster receives a call from her dad explaining he isn't able to take time off work to see her and meet her partner. Robert Brewster is her father. a man who works in the military as a high-ranking officer. In the meantime, someplace else, another visitor arrives, a Terminator. Later, a truck is seen dropping John off in a quiet place as he breaks into an animal's hospital to take medicine for himself. On the other hand, the Terminator is seen approaching a bar and enters without permission due to being naked. He goes inside and we see a crowd of people cheering him on. The Terminator approaches a man to give him his clothes and forcefully exits with the clothes as well as shiny sunglasses, but breaks them as it doesn't suit him. Breaking into a car, he starts it up and finds a nice pair of glasses before driving off like a madman. Meanwhile, the TX arrives at a drive-thru, finding and killing one of her targets. On the go, she crashes a house party and kills some more of her targets without hesitation. Back to John, he has passed out and awakens when he hears Kate arriving at the animal hospital, who notices a bottle empty on the floor. John confronts her, aiming a gun at her and ordering her not to call authorities while trying to explain his situation. Kate tells him that the medicine he used is for dogs and courageously jumps on him to lock him in a cage. She soon gets a client who she opens the door for and brings her pet through. Coming back to confront John, she asks him questions and finds out who he is and introduces herself. She tells him they are old classmates and brings back memories before hearing someone talking inside the building. The visitor is problematically shot by the TX, proving how ruthless she is, leading Kate to hide from her. As the machine scans the room, it finds a bandage with John's blood on it. Kate makes a run for it and is confronted by the Terminator, who throws her around and asks questions about John. The vehicle then approaches and crashes into her, causing an explosion. The T-850 exits the car and picks Kate up and begins interrogating her for John's whereabouts by locking her in a locker. John then breaks free and notices the hand of the TX before running away until he sees the T-850 come to him and drag him into the car. Unfortunately, the TX walks towards them and the T-850 begins shooting, only to be met with a force like no other. Driving away, John spots the cops driving to the scene, and upon arrival, they find the T-850. Kate calls the cops and tells them the situation before losing her network. The TX then enters a truck and gains control of all vehicles, making them drive like crazy, and simultaneously, the T-850 gets back up and steals a bike to chase the TX. Driving through the streets, Kate is seen inside John's car before he crashes into a civilian. He begins trying to take off and is stopped by the civilian, until 50 arrives, scaring John into magically starting the car and evading the pursuit. The TX collides into random cars as John continues his pursuit, whilst officers use the pit maneuvers, veering him off course. Close behind, the TX shoots her arm, causing an explosion, and drives straight through along with the Terminator, who's riding alongside her. The TX turns her crane on its side and the truck demolishes anything in its path, disallowing anyone to have an advantage in getting to John. Opening fire, the Terminator hits her tires, making her hit him with the crane, holding on for dear life. On the other hand, John continues going toe-to-toe with the officers as the TX smashes the Terminator into a building, destroying everything with no regard for human life. Eventually, he is smashed into a fire truck and takes over the wheel. With everyone now closing in on each other, the T-850 rams into the TX, causing her to blow up the truck. Surprising her, the Terminator throws her out the vehicle and drives, but unfortunately she holds on. The T-850 then sets her up by flipping her truck and manages to get into John's car, as we see the TX eyeing them down, exiting the wreckage. The T-850 then checks John's eyes, hurting him and telling him there's no sign of injury, before John goes on a rant telling him how he doesn't remember and is confused. In the meantime, they continue driving on the freeway and we see Kate making a scene, kicking and screaming as John and Terminator continue discussing Judgment Day and the Resistance. He asks for a knife, healing himself up by cutting his wound, ripping it out, showing off his machine body. He explains how TX is better than him at everything, worrying John as to how they take her out. He throws a part of his machinery out, which results in a bomb blowing up, shocking John, seeing the mess he left behind. Coming to a stop, they come to a petrol station and Terminator starts buying items for the road trip before his preferred glasses, leading him to be questioned by the store owner. Eventually, he opens the truck and Kate jumps on him, screaming, getting attention, drawing suspicion as we see the owner call somebody. Calming down, John tries to connect with Kate, who is angry at the fact John kidnapped her. He opens the latch, making Terminator tell her who he is, but is shut down, unwilling to comprehend their words. John begins to put into perspective how the world is dependent on him, unable to bring himself to make the right decision. Kate is confused on what he's yapping about, trying to ask questions. The pair talk about the past and how they had history, starting to gain his memories back a little, continuing to drive on an empty road. In the meantime, Scott, Kate's partner, finds the TX in his room, killing him instantly. Someone knocks at the door and Scott answers, informing him they are police and looking for Kate's whereabouts, as we see the TX has taken his body form. Meanwhile, the Terminator arrives somewhere and lets Kate and John out, dragging them to a spot. Entering the building confused, we see Sarah's tombstone, confusing John due to the fact he didn't know where she was buried. Terminator pulls out her coffin, showing us it's filled with weapons, and explains Sarah was buried in New Mexico. John is saddened by this as Kate feels bad for him listening to him talk about his mother. Kate grabs a weapon, aiming it at the Terminator. Unfazed, he walks towards her and is shot in the face, spitting out the bullet. Kate finally believes as she's horrified at the truth and is quickly interrupted by gas canisters. Running away, Kate is grabbed by all the officers and SWAT preparing to have a shootout with the pair. The Terminator straps up as John freaks out, panicking, until the Terminator chokes him, causing him to get an angry reaction. Letting go, Terminator tells him to keep the same energy when fighting for his life. Meanwhile, officers inform Scott his fiancée is okay, leading the TX to kill them, showing her true formation, and turns the car around quickly to find Kate. Dr. Silberman approaches Kate and she mentions how the Terminator isn't human. He blames adrenaline for this explanation, implying she hallucinated this. SWAT prepares to enter, but the Terminator exits with a coffin in its hand and is shot at. Dr. Silberman sees this, horrifying him with his look. The Terminator fires every bullet in his machine gun, forcing cops to flee for their lives. Accomplishing satisfaction, he puts the coffin in the car as we see John exit from it, also stealing the vehicle, continuing to take fire. Escaping the cops, Kate notices her fiancé and approaches, suspicious of him, only to see she is correct as the TX transforms into her figure. Arriving in time, Terminator fires his RPG, blowing her up, saving Kate. The TX continues her pursuit, whilst the trio drives away, shocked at how she done that. Getting closer, she jumps onto their truck using a saw to get in, making Terminator swerve to throw her off. Opening the roof, John shoots her as they crash, taking their roof off but maintain traction, driving off calmly. Back at the scene, the TX wakes up and burns a tree when looking at her arm. Coming to a stop, the group get out and enter a caravan while Kate cries over her fiancé, with John trying to comfort her. John talks to the Terminator, to which he is informed that he and Kate were married in a different life. He continues talking and Kate overhears him as he mentions her father. She is told that he works at Skynet, shocking John as everything begins to make sense. Kate is told her father plays a big role in the mission but is denied by the Terminator to save him, as John and Kate are his priorities. The Terminator then informs them the launch is happening in 3 hours and they must clear the area due to the nuclear bomb that's going to go off. John then aims a gun, insisting they save her dad or else there is no future for them. Approaching him, the Terminator agrees to save him, relieving the two humans. Beginning the rescue mission, they drive the caravan with John making weapons. Kate asks questions as to why the Terminator is John's protector and ends up thanking him for doing this. Being told she is John's spouse and second in command, Kate is surprised as to why she chose John. John is told he must inevitably die, and when asked how, the Terminator answers by saying he does it. In the meantime, Robert is seen at his workplace discussing a virus that's taken over their satellites. Confused as to how this is happening, the Pentagon makes contact, while we see a robot aircraft in his place. Still shocked at the news, John and Kate review their options and history amongst each other, enjoying one another's company before being interrupted by the Terminator. Meanwhile at the lab, Robert is on the phone to the Pentagon trying to solve this virus issue, reassuring them Skynet will help this issue be resolved. Simultaneously, the TX enters a secured facility, fascinated by the machinery, and begins programming it. Robert is hesitant to make the order happen, but with everyone watching he begins the program, bringing Skynet into work and alive. Their systems shut down and begin glitching until they're interrupted by Kate, who is shot by the Terminator, revealing the real Kate. Terminator fires at will, taking her out, but Robert is caught by a bullet and is attended to by his daughter. Simultaneously, the machines begin shooting at the working people as the group try and come up with a plan. They make their way to the office but see the robots approaching and hide. Looking for the group, the Terminator shocks them by pulling out his gun, terminating his kind. Finally, they get to the safe inside Robert's office, who is close to his death, informing them on what Skynet is and how to beat it. Kate begins to cry at his sight and is disrupted when a spacecraft fires at them. They evacuate the place with the TX arriving in their face, leading to a fight between the two machines. Trying to beat her, Terminator is using his strength to kill her, throwing her around. They continue fighting, unable to be victorious over each other. Noticing how much more advanced the TX is, they fall through the roof, continuing their battle as she burns his face, before snapping his neck, defeating the Terminator. Still focused, John and Kate run towards the lab and are stopped by a machine who opens fire, attempting to kill them. Kate opens fire herself, smashing the machine to bits, impressing John with her courage. Finally they see the TX closing in and turn on the machines to confuse the Terminator. Running for their life, they're chased by the TX, who tries burning them but is stopped due to the magnetic field trapping the TX. Kate screams for her to die as their plan works, melting the Terminator as they begin running to safety. Coming back to life, the Terminator fixes his neck and attaches it to his body, while we see the TX also using a saw to save itself. Finding a plane, Kate and John see the Terminator approaching. Shocked, the Terminator attacks John and is jumped on by Kate, who is thrown off. He is unable to control himself as John pleads with him to spare him but is ignored, being attacked again. John asks him what his mission is, to which he responds saying the safety of John and Kate is his priority. Surprisingly enough, the Terminator stops himself from killing John, choosing to spare him. He chooses to ignore his command, smashing the car, refusing to kill John. John goes over to Kate to end the upcoming war as the Terminator stands still, shutting off his system. With the duo flying and trying to end this once and for all, they enter the government property and get off the plane. Inside, John opens fire at the air to make sure the coast is clear. Powering on the computer, a chopper crashes into the building, only for the TX to appear once more, looking impossible to kill. Another chopper crashes the place, saving the pair, only for us to see the Terminator back from the dead. As the doors shut, Terminator holds it open for them, allowing them to crawl through. But the TX sees this and grabs John. Terminator helps him and grabs the TX, shoving a bomb into its mouth, sacrificing himself and saving John and Kate. They come to the secure lab where the government hid their work, and John gets angry as nothing is there. Kate stares at him, informing him nothing is here, due to the Terminator and her father saving them, giving them a chance at life. Suddenly they hear voices through a microphone asking for help, and John replies, knowing this is his moment, as Kate holds his hands, uniting together. As we see, the Judgment Day has begun and humanity is near extinction. Terminator Salvation kicks off at the Longview State Correctional Facility in 2003. There, a death row inmate named Marcus has 1 hour to live, and is approached by Dr. Serena, asking him to sign a consent form to donate his body to a noble cause. Being told he may have a possibility for a second life even though he is responsible for a dead cop as well as his brother, Marcus eventually agrees to it and signs the paper written by Cyberdyne Systems, telling him he is doing something noble. The scene quickly cuts to Marcus being tied down and strapped into what will be his last few minutes. Asking if he has any last words, Marcus tells them all to go f*** themselves. Nah, just kidding. He remains silent when a man on site gives the executor a signal. Triggering the execution, the movie recaps to us that Skynet had become self-aware and attacked humanity. The survivors of the nuclear fire on Judgment Day lived on to become entangled in a war where machines attempted to eradicate humans. But they have hope in one single man, John Connor. In 2018, 15 years later, the Resistance launches a drone attack at a Skynet research and development facility. Causing a massive explosion, humans begin landing one at a time with bombs going off all around them. Out comes their leader, John Connor, who wants an in-and-out mission to grab information from some computers and escape. With the crew heading straight underground, they do not discover any machines, and they think it is a setup when a bogey appears out of nowhere and is shot at until it is destroyed. Continuing through, they arrive at an underground testing site where humans have been chopped up and tested. Moving forward, the crew find what they're looking for, surrounded by caged humans. Grabbing the intel, the humans seem to be en route to create a new Terminator, the T-800. Connor seems starstruck but eventually returns to topside and quickly discovers his men dead. Spotting an enemy aircraft, Connor decides to go after it on his own. On the chase, a massive explosion nearby causes him to shake and eventually crash land. Quickly getting out, he sees the impact of a massive explosion and knows his team is dead when he is suddenly pushed away by a Terminator. Hearing radio chatter from command base, Connor gives the tragic news of only one survivor, himself. As time passes, a man stumbles out of the wreckage, and we get to see that it is Marcus, who cannot believe or understand what is going on and decides to steal a dead soldier's clothes. Connor in the meantime wants to head to command base, but his access is denied as they don't want to give away their position. Connor instead says to open the ramp and jump straight out of the plane and into the water below. Down deep is the Resistance command headquarters, and John has a meeting with the lovely General Ashdown, who doesn't believe in Connor being their savior. With the general not saying what they found in the underground base, Connor demands to be let in on the details as his men all died for it. General Losenko says it is a solution to all their problems. Mentioning all the machines use shortwave transmitters to communicate, their intel has located a hidden signal under the primary channel which allows for direct control over the machines. With Connor volunteering to test it, the generals agree due to his admirable qualifications. Being handed the codes for the signal, he is told that the Resistance intercepted a message from Skynet that plans on killing Connor as well as a civilian named Kyle Reese. With Connor getting ready for the mission and seeing the team he will take with him, he meets Barnes, the brother of one of his deceased troops. Soon enough, we get to meet with John's beautiful wife, Kate Connor. The following day, Marcus traverses the landscape while Connor listens to tapes that Sarah Connor made for him. His mother says he must send his father back in time even though he is just a teenager or John will never be born, and Skynet would win the war. Knowing that his dad is alone somewhere and that Skynet is hunting him down, Connor has faith in their new secret weapon but is scared that Skynet will find Kyle and kill him to reset the future. Marcus in the meantime discovers his old home burned and destroyed. Having no idea what is going on, he screams and a Terminator appears in the distance. Firing his machine gun, Marcus is pushed away and told to stay. The hostile continues forward and holds down the trigger until it is caught in a trap and yanked off the ground. The man then grabs Marcus and takes off running when they are shot at once again. The Terminator frees itself from the trap and we see a young girl star holding a shotgun. With the hostile attempts to force its way to the group, Star releases another trap that puts an end to its life. With Marcus confused beyond compare, Kyle Reese aims his gun at Marcus and wants to know why he's wearing a resistance jacket. Stealing the gun from Kyle and shutting him up, Marcus hands it back and learns the bot was a Terminator, a T-600 model. He also discovers that he is in the year 2018 and learns about Judgment Day. Suddenly the trio drop to the ground as a ship flies past looking for them. Once gone, Kyle explains that was a hunter-killer, and thanks to Marcus it knows their location. Back with John and his team, they have found a Hydra bot and disabled its way of communicating to Skynet. Plugging their weapon in, they turn the signal up and soon enough the bot stops moving and the group can't believe it. Turning the device off, John tells his crew it's time to take it to the next level. Back with the trio, Marcus teaches Kyle a little trick to not lose his gun. Discovering a broken radio, Marcus attempts to fix it and learns that Kyle and Star are the resistance branch for LA. With Marcus fixing the radio, John simultaneously gives out a call to all pockets of resistance. With hundreds of small teams listening, John tells them all that Skynet is planning something big, but the resistance is also doing the same. Stating his name for the record, Kyle wants to find him. The next morning, Marcus cuts himself while trying to fix a car. Turning it on, he wants to head north alone to find someone. Kyle, on the other hand, wants them all to travel east. With Star forced out of the car, a Terminator scout appears, and the trio is forced into the vehicle. With the drone coming face to face with the crew, it scans Kyle's face and Marcus gets a trick shot and kills the robot. Stopping the car, Marcus tells Kyle to get out of the driver's seat. Back with John, he gets intel that there is unusual movement in LA. John immediately sends out a team to rescue the civilians there. With the trio traversing the great barren landscape, they are problematically jumped on by a random crew. With Marcus politely asking them for fuel, they say no. Their boss, Virginia, then comes out to de-escalate the situation. Offering the group some food for their troubles, they are attacked by a transformer-sized bot named the Harvester. Blowing the place up, Star is injured, and the trio try escaping but are left on their own. It works out in their favor though, as all vehicles are blown to pieces. Marcus watches as people are rounded up and taken as prisoners. So instead of running, Marcus opens up a fuel line and drives the fuel truck directly into the Harvester. Driving away, they shoot at the fuel tank, but it doesn't trigger an explosion. Star comes in clutch though and gives them exactly what they need to send the entire base to hell and leave it in ashes. Somehow the Harvester survived the attack and releases 2 Moto Terminators. Kyle shoots at one of them and damn can these bots drive, but Kyle smartly shoots an oil barrel at one of the Terminators, causing it to crash. The second Terminator, however, disappears, then suddenly comes from above them. Shooting at the truck, the Terminator from earlier also returns and the group is in deep shit. Kyle does manage to get a superb shot and take out one of their assailants, but the second one is a bit of a nuisance until they attach the crane to it and slam it around the place to end it. The hunter-killer suddenly arrives on the scene to blow a gaping hole on the bridge. The crew manage to greatly damage the ship, but both Kyle and Star fall out and are grabbed by the Harvester to be imprisoned. Marcus then quickly dives off the bridge as the truck is blown to pieces. He lands on the enemy vessel and with an axe tries to free his friends when he is grabbed by the Harvester. 2 resistance ships then take action into their own hands and destroy one enemy ship and also take out the Harvester, causing Marcus to fall into the water below. With the main vessel letting out more mini-ships, one of the resistance planes are shot out of the sky. With the second one taking fire and doing evasive maneuvers, it isn't enough, and it too is destroyed. Some while later, Marcus crawls out of the water and begins walking through the landscape himself. Finding the pilot that ejected from the ship earlier, Blair Williams is helped down by Marcus, planning on chasing the ship to Skynet. Blair laughs at him and says just come with her to meet John Connor, the only person that may be able to help him. Soon enough, the duo arrive at some shelter and Blair seems to be injured. After going to patch herself up, Blair is pounced upon by some men who aim their guns at her. However, she manages to handle her own until she is grabbed. Marcus comes to the rescue and one by one annihilates all the bandits, clearly showing off his superiority in combat. Blair kneecaps one of the men but leaves him be. Sitting next to a fire they created a while later, Blair drops a heavy quote.
You can focus on what is lost, or you can fight for what is left.
With it being quite cold, Blair cuddles Marcus for his body heat and thanks him for saving her life, as good men are rare. Saying he is not a good guy, she reassures him and says people always deserve a second chance. Back with John and his crew, they travel deep into enemy territory to test out their new weapon. Causing a distraction to lure in their enemies, it works to perfection. Activating their new signal, they turn it up to max and soon enough the enemy ship crashes. With their new secret weapon working as expected, Connor is told the attack will commence tomorrow worldwide, with his unit told to take out Skynet Central. The general has no regards for prisoners, however, and wants to level the landscape. At Skynet, meanwhile, the human prisoners are treated like animals and placed in cages with deadly consequences if anyone attempts to escape. Once morning arrives, Blair and Marcus start walking through a minefield when Marcus is suddenly hit. Being carried to a doctor, he remembers some of his memories when Kate goes to perform surgery on him until she stops and Barnes knocks him out. Awakening soon after, Kate explains that everything is somewhat human, but he has a hybrid nervous system as well as one human cortex and one machine. Marcus seems very confused at John, who mentions to him he is not a human. Screaming in agony and pain at himself, he mentions his name and date of birth. With Marcus trying to tell Connor he means no harm, John refuses to let him go and is sure Skynet sent him to kill them. Better yet, John says that he tried killing his mother Sarah Connor and his father Kyle Reese, but Marcus mentions he saved Kyle's life, who is now headed to Skynet. Blair is lectured at her stupidity of bringing Marcus here, but she tells them he saved her life and is not their enemy. With the humans being walked around like sheep going to the slaughter, Kyle steals a metal rod when his identification is found. Quickly being stolen from the pack, Barnes gets a bullet ready to end Marcus. Shooting him, he yells in agony when Blair arrives and tells Barnes that John wants him as she takes the gun and shoots Marcus. With Barnes going away, Blair drops Marcus to the ground and quickly jumps down to help him escape. With John listening to Sarah's old tapes, he is so confused about Marcus and feels their enemy is ahead of them, as he himself believes he is human, and that Kyle Reese is alive. With that, Marcus is cut free, and he thanks Blair. Barnes then goes to see John, who quickly realizes the deception of his trooper. With the duo making an escape, Barnes quickly launches a rocket and engulfs the place. But it seems Marcus is stronger than he looks and manages to save them long enough to escape. Being stuck in the minefield, Blair smartly causes all the mines to trigger, allowing them to run through. With bullets, rockets, and everything being thrown at them, Marcus tells Blair they need to run. But on the way, Blair is injured. Carrying her, they walk through too much fire and eventually stop. Being surrounded, the troops see that Marcus duped them, and he manages to hijack a bike and jump the barricades. With John shooting at him from a chopper, he eventually hits his target. John then launches a carpet bomb to destroy the whole area and tells his men to find the Terminator. Searching the river below, Hydrobots suddenly pop out and attack the troops. Not understanding how the hell the bots are there, the passenger is ripped into shreds and John escapes the chopper. Shooting at the hostiles, John is forced into the water. Taking out one Hydrobot at a time, he switches to his pistol, but Marcus saves his ass just in time. Telling John that he can get the duo into Skynet to save Kyle, John understands that Marcus is his last hope. Handing him a radio to contact him once he's inside Skynet, the half-human, half-robot swims away. Blair is immediately questioned by John, who demands answers. Simply saying that Marcus is a man and not a machine, he sets her free. The next day, Command contacts Connor, who tells the general to abort the mission or delay it, as he may be able to save the hostages, including Kyle.
The key to the future, to the past. Without him, we lose everything.
The general loses the plot at John and doesn't listen to a word he says and makes sure to relieve him of his command. With the crew staying loyal to Connor, he immediately jumps on the radio and alerts all the resistance everywhere that if they attack tonight, they will all die. Telling them that a woman tried to warn everyone about the truth of judgment, they locked her away, and that woman was his mother. With her theories all coming to fruition, he pleads them all to not attack Skynet, as even one bomb will destroy all their futures. With John saying farewell to his beloved, he has one instruction for his men.
I'll be back.
Pumping music in the streets as a decoy, Connor sets up a trap and destroys a Moto Terminator. Hijacking the vehicle, he reprograms it and sets off. At the Skynet perimeter, meanwhile, Marcus shows himself to the guard and is shown as active. Being granted entry, he climbs the gate and makes it inside the stronghold. Running around the place as discreet as he can, John makes it to the outer perimeter and watches. With Marcus entering the main headquarters of Skynet, he is zapped and sinks into the system. Going through the data and code, he disarms the turret outside before finding Kyle's cell. Sending the information to John, Marcus continues through the database to find records of himself. Seems Dr. Serena died from cancer, but Cyberdyne continued their work and even managed to buy the United States Air Force. The last thing that Marcus sees is the destruction that Skynet caused soon after, and it isn't pretty. With John, meanwhile, he sneaks his way into the stronghold and quickly finds a place to hide before a Terminator approaches and just barely misses him. The general in the submarine, meanwhile, receives some bad news for himself when the entire resistance refuses to launch until John Connor gives the green light. John, in the meantime, discovers where the prisoners are being held and opens up their cages. Sending everyone to the transport vehicle outside, John looks for Kyle Reese. Marcus, in the meantime, awakens and looks like Skynet has done some work to him. Dr. Serena then pops up and welcomes him home. Saying that he was programmed to come back, he is an infiltrator prototype and is the only one of his kind. With Skynet messing around with him and saying he worked exactly as expected by both bringing Kyle Reese as well as John Connor to them, his memories are shown as evidence to support their claim. With all the humans running to the transport, John screams for Kyle Reese, and Skynet makes Marcus understand that when humans are desperate, they look for hope, and they provided it to them, making them believe their secret signal actually works. The signal that they tested was just a way for the resistance to reveal themselves, and Skynet has now discovered the command center. With Command quickly realizing they've been found, General Losenko says they've killed themselves as Skynet has tracked their signal. Within seconds, the submarine is blown to pieces and Skynet tells Marcus their machines kept failing until Marcus, the perfect infiltration machine, was created, and he will be known as the John Connor Killer. John, in the meantime, is jumped by a Terminator T-800 series who can easily withstand gunfire. Getting into combat, Marcus sees what's happening with Kyle and decides to rip out his control chip, and Skynet tells him he will not have a second chance. Not giving a shit, he destroys the computer and the base goes into lockdown mode. Finding his once human body, the scene cuts to Barnes being told that Connor needs air support, and they all get to work. With Kyle about to be crushed by a Terminator, he stabs it in the back of the neck and it holds down its trigger. John fortunately runs into his dad and the three of them begin their escape procedure. With the T-800 killing one of its own, a grenade does nothing to the Terminator. A second shot does a little more damage, but the trio are forced to jump into the Terminator facility. With so many being built, they discover fuel cells, the life source for the T-800s. With it being nuclear, they must be cautious as their enemy approaches. Coming from behind them though, the battle kicks off and the trio attempt to flee. John decides he wants to end this all and jumps out of the elevator to get into another fight with the T-800. Bullets do nothing to this advanced creation, and Connor is picked up like a rag doll when Marcus comes from nowhere to save him. John runs to the fuel cells and prepares a bomb. Marcus refuses to let the Terminator touch Connor, but this is not an easy fight for him. With the Terminator using surroundings to knock Marcus all around the place, John plants the bomb and Marcus is punched in the heart and deemed terminated. With John escaping the Terminator for the time being, the civilians outside get to the chopper and Kyle tells the resistance Connor is still inside. With the T-800 using Kyle's voice, it manages to lure John out of hiding. John smartly shoots and drops molten metal on his assailant. Believing it to be over, the Terminator arises from the liquid, and Connor supercools the Terminator, causing it to slowly move until it gives him a massive scar and stops moving. With John getting out of the way, he begins reviving Marcus. The T-800 starts to move again, but John is able to revive Marcus as he is stabbed through the chest. Marcus grabs the metal rod and uses it to detach the head of the Terminator. On the ground and in pain, Marcus grabs John and begins carrying him out. Kate soon sees her husband and everyone boards the chopper and takes off. Once in the sky, Star hands Connor the detonation device and he makes sure that the base is blown to atoms. With a beautiful spectacle, the scene shifts to the next day where John lays down in a makeshift surgical room. With Kate approaching the rest of the group, she tells them John is not going to make it as his heart is giving out. Calling Kyle to come over, he tells him to take the jacket, officially making him a member of the resistance like he dreamed. Kyle walks away with tears in his eyes. Marcus then steps up and tells Kate to take his heart. Blair immediately gets emotional, and Marcus says everyone deserves a second chance, and this is his. Saying goodbye to both Kyle and Star, he jumps on the surgical table and the operation commences. The strength of the human heart is the difference between men and machines, and John Connor awakens soon after on a chopper. But with Skynet's global network still remaining strong, this war is not over. But John is ready for whatever lies ahead. Terminator Dark Fate kicks off with Sarah Connor being interviewed, saying she can see children looking like burnt paper. Then the blast wave hits them, and they all fly apart like leaves, with the doctors telling her it's a dream. She screams at them that they are all dead. The scene then cuts to post-Judgment Day, where there is a future without any hope. A future where the machines destroy everything. That future never happened though, and in Guatemala in 1998, Sarah made sure to stop that future to protect her son. But she fails to do that as her son is shot by a T-800. Then after pushing Sarah aside, John Connor loses his life and is deemed terminated. Being able to save 3 billion lives, she couldn't save the one she wanted to the most. 22 years later in Mexico City, we get to once again see that the world has been greeted by a time traveler, a woman named Grace. Being carried to help, the cops quickly arrive on the scene and arrest both people helping Grace. Believing she has taken something, we get to see that Grace isn't fully human and takes on the police. Easily neutralizing 4 officers, Grace needs a little favor. As the sun rises the next day, we are introduced to Dani Ramos. She goes to see her little brother Diego, as well as her father Vicente, who requires quite a lot of medicine. Heading out for the day with her brother, it seems one more guest wants to join the party. A Rev-9. It consists of an endoskeleton covered in liquid metal and has the ability to split its liquid metal and skeleton. Going straight to Vicente, he asks where Dani is, but Vicente thinks something is off. With the Ramos siblings going to work in a factory, it seems one of them has been replaced by a robot, and Dani goes to have a word with the boss when her dad suddenly arrives and tells the manager that his kids forgot their lunch again. Grace also makes her way into the building and steals a guard's uniform. With Vicente finding his son, he asks where Dani is when he spots her. Turning the bag he's holding into a gun, he goes to shoot but is shot at by Grace. Dani is confused what's going on and Grace takes off running with him. With the Rev-9 quickly catching up, Grace shows off her strength and durability. Managing to neutralize and injure the Terminator, no opponent has ever been this strong before. Diego then uses the machinery to their advantage and have bought themselves some time. Grace explains to the duo that the thing chasing them is a Terminator, a Rev-9 that was sent from the future. She details that she is human but is augmented and was sent to protect them. With cops chasing the duo, the Rev-9 finds his way back into the chase. As Dani is Grace's mission, they are quickly caught by their pursuer and need to do something immediately. Managing to put a gap with their assailant, the trio are not safe and are squished against a barricade but make it out. Being rammed over and over from behind, Grace gets Diego to drive while she tosses metal rods at the Terminator. Being the most advanced model ever created, it is easily the strongest opponent and just barely misses Danny. Grace fights with it until it is hit off the van and ran over. Their truck wheels give out though and the team crash. Diego seems to be tragically injured, and the Rev 9 hijacks a vehicle and goes straight for the group. Grace apologizes to Danny and moves her out of the way when her brother is killed. Screaming in agony, Grace grabs her and leaves just as the Terminator rebuilds itself again. Its endoskeleton also approaches from the other side, and out of nowhere a car hits into it. Out steps an aged Sarah Connor who shoots at both the Terminators and is pretty badass.
I'll be back.
With Sarah going to kill the Rev 9, the duo hijacks her car and she swears at them. Danny wants to go home to tell her father about Diego, but Grace makes her understand the Terminator needs contact to turn into the thing, meaning her dad is dead. The endoskeleton in the meantime links back up with its body and reconnects. Grace simultaneously says she is crashing and needs medicine. Dozing off, she is forced to stop driving and can barely breathe. With Danny jumping into the driver's seat, they go to a pharmacy and ask for specific pills. Using a gun to grab what she can, Grace ends up dropping to the ground and Danny is forced to take on the role of the perpetrator. With the pharmacist helping them outside, Sarah is waiting for them and wants answers. With Grace in the backseat of the car, Danny has no idea what was after them and why Grace was protecting her. Once at a motel, Sarah gives Grace her medicine and they wait. Grace then gets a flashback even though it's in the future. In her flash forward, she and her team prepare for an operation. With their leader leading the charge, the battle begins and almost ends in 1 second. As machines kill off all remaining troops, Rev 9s appear and Grace is greatly wounded with her teammates being killed off one by one. She doesn't give up just yet and shoots when the scene cuts to her being treated. With the only way of her living being an augment, she is made into one and awakens in the past to quickly move Sarah's gun away from her face. With Grace explaining she is an enhanced human from 2042, Sarah begins her life story and learns from Grace that Skynet doesn't exist in the future. But nonetheless, a Terminator was sent from a future that never happened and her son was killed. Sarah's life since then is hunting Terminators and she tells them it's time to get moving. On the road, Sarah learns that Skynet doesn't exist, but something called Legion is embroiled in a war with humans. With humans never learning and continually making the same mistakes, Sarah confesses to the group that she knew where they were as she gets a text message with exact coordinates of Terminators, and the message always ends by saying for John. Giving Grace her phone, she hacks it and gets some GPS coordinates. Surprisingly, her commander made her tattoo the exact same coordinates on herself in case things go sideways. With their next destination being Texas, the group ditch their car and need to illegally cross. At the Rathium data center in Mexico City, the Rev 9 kills a guard and inserts itself into the grid. Looking through city cameras, he discovers they are headed to Texas. Once night hits, Grace tells Danny that in the future, everything was normal, until all phones, satellites, and even power grids just went out. The world just turned catastrophic, and the second day was a nuclear attack followed by World War III. With the Legion hunting down the survivors, Grace doesn't know how she managed to live past the next few years. When the humans began fighting back, Sarah knows the deal and presumes Danny's child would lead the resistance, hence why they wanted her dead. The next day, the group link up with Danny's uncle who says he'll help them get across the border. At the operations and aerial surveillance base, meanwhile, a woman casually gets to work but slaughters all men in the room with her. Hacking the data and information there, the Terminator finds the exact coordinates of his targets and they are in trouble right now. With Grace seeing the drone above them, the Rev 9 uses a general's voice to send a team to kill what he makes them think are cartel members. Within minutes, the entire group is surrounded and told to halt by the Border Patrol. With all of them raising their hands, they are arrested one at a time, and when returning to the officers' cars, the drone from above dives in for an attack and Grace realizes this and saves Danny just in time. As time passes, we move to the U.S. Border Patrol Detention Center where Danny is being processed and seen as a lunatic. With Border Patrol conducting surgery on Grace, they find her drugs and realize she isn't normal. Confused with what a scan shows, the Terminator soon arrives at the base and goes inside saying he has been ordered to pick up a detainee. Sarah Connor is also taken from her cell and is wanted in over 50 countries. Being quite popular, she is taken away when Grace breaks her handcuffs and immobilizes the team in the room. With the Terminator looking for Danny, Grace spots him and gets an idea. Triggering the fire alarm, Sarah uses this to launch her escape and Grace frees all detainees. Finding Danny and running away with her, all the guards are slaughtered and butchered by the Rev 9, who shows them the heartlessness of a machine. Grace and Danny get onto a chopper and Sarah quickly runs and joins them and shoots the Terminator a few times to allow themselves to be free. After a lot of traveling, the trio arrive at the GPS coordinates and see an American flag outside. Knocking on the door, Sarah is shocked to see it's her son's killer, the Terminator that ruined her life. Grace is forced to stop Sarah when she says, "You mother..." The other two women manage to calm their companion, and Carl, the Terminator now reformed, says he was made and sent by Skynet many years ago. Danny goes to sit with Sarah, who reminisces about her beautiful little baby boy. Soon enough, Carl offers them all a drink. and Sarah will not accept it or any of his hospitality. With Carl now having a wife as well as a kid, he found her in a very rough relationship and saved her. Caring for the family gave him purpose, and he finally understood what he had taken away from Sarah on that horrific day. Sarah thinks that Carl is talking shit, but with his orders and his mission completed, he learned and became as human as possible. He also confesses he gave Sarah meaning after her son's death by sending her Terminator coordinates. Shooting 3 bullets in his heart, Carl mentions that Sarah changed the future and killed Skynet and also set him free, and now he will freely choose to protect Danny. Soon enough, both Carl's wife and stepson arrive to meet the crew. Sarah and Carl both still have beef with one another that'll soon get to Drake and Kendrick's level, but still come up with a plan to lure the Rev 9 into a kill box and end it. Carl then takes the team into his garage, and they cannot believe the amount of weapons he has, but he simply says,
"This is Texas."
The Terminator has just killed your whole family.
Carl suggests to the team that they grab a military-grade EMP, and Sarah thinks she can help. Soon enough, Carl says goodbye to his new family, and Sarah low-key feels bad for him. As they drive away, Carl seems to have told his family that the day he warned them about has come, and Danny apologizes to him for the problem she brought. Sarah, on the other hand, says she will kill him once the mission is over, and he understands. After a couple hours has passed, it seems the Rev 9 is closing in on his targets. The targets, meanwhile, grab in a favor from a major and receive the EMP device. But Grace cuts the niceties short when she notices a chopper coming at them. The major is shot, and the team speed away in the vehicle and completely miss a RPG shot at the endoskeleton. The major calls in and alerts his entire base to the situation. Safely making it onto the base, the crew go directly on an aeroplane, and the major will stall for them as long as he can. As they take off, the chopper begins firing at them, and they return fire, causing the chopper to crash. The Terminator makes it onto the plane when Carl fights him. This distraction allows the 2 women to drop their car and push the Rev 9 over the edge. Problematically, the group discover that the EMPs were destroyed in the combat, and Carl estimates a 12% probability of success. Grace opens up about her past, which is the future, and it was Danny who had saved her from the scavengers, and without her, she would never have lived through the tragedy, as Danny raised her and guided her alongside hundreds of scavengers which she turned into an army. It was her, not her offspring, that saves the future, and that's why the Legion wants her dead. Being the John Connor of this timeline, the Terminator attacks again. This homicidal maniac pushes his plane into his targets, and they are all clinging on for dear life. Grace quickly goes to save Danny and holds onto her. With their assailant approaching, Carl is forced to hold him down while the others get into a military vehicle. As the plane sinks lower and lower, the cargo doors won't open, and as the group fend off their attacker, Carl saves the day by locking the Terminator and blasting the cargo doors wide open. Cutting the straps, the Rev 9 splits itself, causing Carl to blow the one half and propel the vehicle into the air, where the team activate the parachute on it. With the plane plummeting down to the ground, it heads straight for a dam and hits the water. With both Terminators still going hard at each other, the other half re-emerges and holds Carl down. Ripping off a part of him, the plane separates them and the endoskeleton transforms back. The women meanwhile manage to land but hang over the edge and into the dam water. Needing to move and fast, Grace decides to cut the vehicle free as she attacks the Terminator. With the truck bouncing and moving across the water, the Rev 9 appears and starts making holes in the truck. Quickly filling up with water, they fully submerge, and Danny smartly engages the parachute at the Terminator, causing it to go away. With the duo making it atop the water, Grace quickly links up with them, and they have to move immediately. Once back on the dam, Grace begins breathing and losing her strength like before. Telling Danny to run, she refuses, and Grace says she has one weapon up her sleeve, her power source. With Carl making it to the group, he hands Grace her medicine and breaks the door open. With the 4 of them making it inside, the Rev 9 slowly approaches when Danny doesn't want to run anymore but make their last stand. Getting all the necessary weapons nearby, the demon makes his way on the scene and wants the girl. Even though Carl came from a similar future, he refuses and the battle begins. With the entire team going all out, the endoskeleton splits from the main body and the group have 2 enemies to fight now. Grace then does an awesome move by moving a chain so fast that it dissects the Terminator. She is injured, however, and the 2 bodies re-emerge like they were never damaged and link up to get into another fight. With the team managing to hold the machine down, Grace chains its mouth and attempts to let a machine kill the machine, and Carl gets the job done. He is trapped, however, and an explosion finally gives us a minute of silence. Believing that all machines from the future are dead, they are happy to see Grace alive. Sarah also discovers Carl's lifeless body when Grace moans in agony from her injuries. Grace tells Danny to take her power source and use it to end the Rev 9, who jumps out of the fire and knocks Sarah out. Slowly coming at Danny, who cries at the thought of killing her friend, she does it and apologizes to Grace. Grabbing the weapon, she instead grabs a gun to shoot the son of a machine. Stupidly losing the weapon, she just manages to grab it when Carl awakens and helps her stab the Terminator in the eye and completely fry its circuits. Carl tries moving it away from the women and sacrifices himself. Holding down the Terminator, it tries to move, but he doesn't allow it, and tells Sarah this is for John and dies in a beautiful death. His system shuts off and Sarah just looks at her son's killer as well as her savior, running to Grace and thanking her. The scene cuts to Danny finding the Grace of her time and watches her. Returning to Sarah, they both get into the car and Danny wants to change the fate of the world. Hence the reason it was titled Dark Fate. Terminator Genisys opens with the main character Kyle Reese narrating how his parents told him about Earth before the machines. He says he never got to see it, but it was so full of hope. He tells us how Skynet came online and launched nuclear devices around the world. A day they called Judgment Day. He was born after that day, and would live in the sewers like a rat. John Connor saved his life one day and he took him into the army he had created and started a resistance in the year 2029. He fought back against the machines and has managed to turn the tide of the war. The humans then prepare for the final attack on the machine's main computer when Kyle questions John as to why they aren't joining the others and instead are attacking a far less important base. John tells Kyle that inside this base is a weapon that they will launch if they lose, and is just as important as the main computer. John thanks him for being by his side for this long, and Kyle says it's only because of him that humanity can be free. By hijacking a prisoner convoy, the humans attempt to sneak into this base. The machines spot this and begin to open fire as the truck begins to enter the base. They let off an explosion, killing the robots surrounding the truck, and begins to open fire back. Helicopters and reinforcements arrive to help, and a full battle begins to escalate. Meanwhile, in the base it is revealed that the weapon is a time machine, and it begins to activate. John Connor and Kyle get out of the truck and are under heavy fire. John realizes that they are using the weapon and rushes in with Kyle following close by. Inside, the machine selects a Terminator and begins its procedure to send it back in time. As John and Kyle are about to be overwhelmed in a last stand, the machines are shut off. The mission on the main computer was a success, and the Terminator was sent back in time in the year 1984. In the future, John and his troops are looking into the machine when John tells them he knows where they sent the Terminator, to the year 1984 to kill his mother. The troops suggest that they send one of their own back in time to stop it. Everybody begins to volunteer, however. Kyle tells John that he will go, and after a bit of back and forth between the two, John agrees. As Reese is about to go into the machine, he and John talk. Reese questions how it is that John knows all he does. He tells him that his mother would tell him the future up till this point, and this is where his knowledge ends. John also tells him that Sarah will be just another scared woman and doesn't know anything about the machines or Skynet yet. John's final words to Kyle are that he must do this job and all of humanity hangs in the balance. As the machine begins to work, a Terminator appears behind John and says you didn't think it would be that easy, and Kyle screams to try and get out but is taken back. His memories rip through his mind and get some memories which don't even look to be his. One of them is a boy saying Genisys is Skynet, and you can kill Skynet before it comes online. After this, he is transported back into an alleyway. In the same night, the Terminator sent back finds a group of hooligans and demands their clothes. A voice says you won't be needing those, and the Terminator turns to see an exact replica of himself but with clothes and a weapon that gets used. They engage in a fist fight and the good Terminator smashes the evil one until it's noticeably a robot. The new Terminator beats the other to the ground, and just as it's about to deliver the final blow, a sniper shoots it in the heart, killing it. Meanwhile, with Kyle, a cop car approaches, and an officer gets out to chase him. Kyle gets the jump on the cop and takes his gun. The officer reveals himself as a Terminator, and Kyle fires, immobilizing him temporarily before hiding in a store. As the Terminator searches for him, Kyle tries to escape but is spotted and nearly stabbed. He then runs into a real cop who orders him to get on his knees. They arrest him, and as they walk him out, the Terminator stabs one. The other cop fires, and he and Kyle run for it. The officer uncuffs Kyle, and they open fire on the Terminator. As the machine closes in to kill, a van crashes through the building, hitting the Terminator. Inside is Sarah Connor, who shoots the robot's head, allowing Kyle to escape. Inside, Sarah tells Kyle she knows who he is. Kyle says she isn't meant to know, but she replies that the past has changed and 1984 no longer exists. She reveals she already killed another Terminator with the help of the good T-1000. Kyle freaks out and shoots at it, causing the van to crash. The T-1000 incapacitates Kyle. As the Terminator and Sarah drive again, the robot tells her she must have a child with Kyle to make John Connor. Sarah gets defensive, saying she wants her life to be her choice. While knocked out, Reese dreams of a child telling him to go to San Francisco on a specific date to destroy something called Genisys, which is Skynet before it activates. He wakes up demanding answers, but Sarah tells him to stop asking, especially after attacking Pops, her name for the good T-1000. Reese expresses distrust towards the robot. During their talk, Pop spots a bit of liquid metal from the bad T-1000 on the truck and shoots it off, warning them that the T-1000 knows their location. Sarah tells Reese that the timeline has changed, and the mission is now to kill Skynet before it's born. As they speak, the T-1000 in a police car morphs outside, leaps towards their van, hooks on, but is blasted off by Reese and Sarah. They blow up the car, but the T-1000 survives. The group reaches a warehouse, and Reese and Sarah continue talking. She explains the past was altered because a Terminator was sent to her as a child. Reese mentions a Terminator grabbed John before he was sent back but is unsure of John's fate. Mid-conversation, the T-1000 jumps through the window. They open fire and it skewers Pops to the wall. Sarah is told to run as the T-1000 reactivates a copy of Pops, which Kyle slows down by launching a grenade. Kyle falls to the basement and avoids its attacks, stunning it with an electrical cord long enough to grab a sniper and shoot its head off. Meanwhile, the liquid T-1000 is still chasing Sarah. She moves through tunnels, hearing noises, and readies her gun, checking her surroundings. Suddenly, Kyle appears, and then another Kyle shows up. One is real, one is fake, and both try to convince her. Sarah makes the right choice, shooting one in the foot, the fake. She and Kyle run as she blasts the roof, causing acid to rain down on the T-1000. It escapes but is about to kill Sarah when Pops grabs it and throws it back in, destroying the T-1000 but melting his hand in the process. Sarah reveals to John they had anticipated the Terminator's arrival and set a trap, gaining access to the T-1000 chip they had been waiting for. They built a time machine and can now use it. Pops tells Kyle and Sarah they must travel into the future to stop Genisys before it activates, but he can't join them because his melted skin would be torn apart by the magnetic field. Sarah berates Kyle, insisting he follow the plan to prevent the attack. Kyle agrees, admitting he's receiving messages in his head, guiding him on the exact time and what to stop. Pops explains the messages are from an alternate timeline of Kyle, who saw them when John was attacked. Sarah and Kyle argue, as she wants to go to the 1980s while Kyle insists on going to 2017. Kyle removes the chip and Sarah points a gun at him. John remembers a quote from his alternate memories that shocks Sarah as it holds personal meaning to her. Finally, she agrees and they prepare to leave. Sarah starts asking about her future son and Kyle shares stories about the hope John brings to humanity. He also tells her how much he knows about her, recounting details John shared. Kyle assures Sarah he would do anything to protect her, even if it meant dying. Pops then talks privately with Sarah, questioning why she hadn't revealed that Kyle is John Connor's father. She hugs him and prepares to leave, saying Pops will be there when they arrive in the future, though he'll have taken the long way. Kyle and Sarah enter the machine, traveling to the future in 2017. They arrive on a highway and are lightly hit by a car. Soon after, police take them away. From a distance, an older Pops watches. In the police van, Sarah shares her childhood story with Kyle, explaining how a Terminator killed her parents. Before her father's death, he told her to swim in a straight line. The same quote Kyle had said earlier, which changed her mind. Sarah was found and raised by Pops for over a decade. Kyle again expresses distrust toward the machine, angering Sarah. At the station, the police believe Kyle and Sarah tried to blow themselves up on the highway. Two detectives are joined by O'Brien, who claims it wasn't a bomb but time travel. They dismiss him and say Homeland Security is taking over. In the infirmary as Sarah is being treated, she overhears a doctor discussing Genisys, an operating system that connects all aspects of life. The detectives inform Sarah that there's no trace of her existence, but Kyle's fingerprint matches a 12-year-old child. O'Brien interrupts, explaining that Kyle and the child are the same person, revealing that Kyle saved his life in 1984. Kyle then tells O'Brien who he is and that he's from the future. Sarah and Kyle argue again, and in the chaos, Sarah knees Kyle and grabs a small metal piece. As the police leave the room, Reese unlocks the handcuffs and they bicker again. Suddenly someone enters. It's John Connor. He embraces Kyle and Sarah, then calls the officers back in and tasers them. They cuff the officers, grab their weapons, and head for an escape. Downstairs, Pops enters the building holding a giant teddy bear. As the group prepares to leave, Sarah asks John to prove he's really him and not a shapeshifter. John shares information that undeniably proves his identity. They make their way through the hospital and into a room to avoid Homeland Security. Pops reaches the security room and spots them moving. As John, Kyle, and Sarah approach a vehicle, John calls Kyle Dad, stunning him. They explain the truth that Sarah and Kyle are John's parents. Just as they say this, Pops arrives in the car park and immediately opens fire on John, hitting him. Kyle and Sarah pull their guns on Pops, but before they shoot, John's blood turns into a metallic liquid, revealing that he's been corrupted by the Terminators. John tells them he is neither fully human nor machine, he is both. In the future, John is captured, tortured, and corrupted by Skynet. He offers Sarah, Kyle, and Pops a deal to join him and become part of the machine, but they refuse. John charges at Sarah, but Pops defends her. Despite Pops' efforts, John easily overpowers him, showing his superior strength and intelligence. John throws Pops through the building, fighting in front of everyone. Both are pulled into a magnetic medical device, and Sarah pulls Pops out, leaving Kyle with John. As John is sucked into the machine, he pleads with Kyle, who amplifies the device, holding John long enough for their escape. After the battle, O'Brien examines the scene, wondering what happened. In the car, they argue about whether John can be saved. Pops explains that Skynet created a biological weapon that infects humans and there's no cure. The only chance to stop John is a magnetic field. Sarah argues that John is now Skynet's hope, not humanity's. At Genisys headquarters, John played a key role in developing Genisys, building an army of robots and a time machine. With Genisys launching in a day, he plans to use everything to take over. A Genisys spokesperson gives a speech as a childlike figure representing Genisys addresses the crowd. Pops takes Sarah and Kyle to his bunker, filled with weapons and gear. They plan to destroy the Genisys servers with C4. Kyle confronts Sarah about their future child, and she tells him that after John is born, Kyle will die, and the only way to protect him is to stay apart. Their talk is interrupted by John, who recalls Sarah telling him about the bunker. He offers them another chance to join him, saying it's the only way Kyle will survive. Sarah fires a grenade launcher, engulfing John in flames, and they escape. Boarding a bus, they leave as John watches them through the blaze. They take a school bus, but John re-emerges on a motorcycle and chases them across the Golden Gate Bridge. John latches onto the bus, pulling out the brakes, causing Sarah to lose control. Kyle and Pops try to fend off John until the bus flips and slides over the edge of the bridge. Pops pulls Sarah and Kyle to safety as John falls into the water with the bus. When authorities arrive, the three surrender, knowing Pops can't take on all the cops. In custody, O'Brien introduces the 12-year-old Kyle and his parents during interrogation. Neither recognizes adult Kyle, but young Kyle comments that he looks like his father. They leave, and Pops notices something is off with one of the detectives. Suddenly, Chung shoots the other detectives, revealing herself as John in disguise. Pops breaks through the two-way mirror, and O'Brien helps Sarah and Kyle escape. Sarah finds the 12-year-old Kyle tracing his hand and telling him to never look back. O'Brien guides them to the roof, where they escape with Pops on a chopper heading to Cyberdyne. John follows in his own chopper. In the air, Sarah shoots at John, but he keeps chasing. Pops gets an idea and tells Sarah, "I'll be back."
I'll be back.
What?
Before dive-bombing into John's chopper, crashing it. They all reach Cyberdyne, but John arrives first, kills the guards, and speeds up the Genisys countdown to 15 minutes. Sarah, Kyle, and Pops plant explosives around the facility, aiming to stop John. They destroy the Genisys avatar projectors as it taunts them. John tries to stop them from damaging the facility, leading to a battle. Pops secures the detonator, but can't set it off since John has Sarah in his grasp. Neither can kill her. Pops is still protecting her, and John needs her to stay alive. Pops takes the fight to an unfinished time machine where John's human tissue is blasted off, revealing his full T-3000 form. Despite heavy damage, Pops impales John and pulls him into the active time machine, trapping both in the magnetic field. Pops tells Kyle to protect Sarah. Kyle gets her out just as the magnetic field intensifies. Pops is thrown into a pool of mimetic polyalloy liquid, while the T-3000 is destroyed in the magnetic field. The explosives go off, destroying most of the facility. Sarah and Kyle take cover in a bunker, surviving the blast. Pops reappears, upgraded with liquid metal. The three go to find a 12-year-old Kyle, where adult Kyle tells his younger self to remember Genisys is Skynet. Now free from Skynet's threat, Sarah chooses her own future and pulls Kyle in for a kiss as Pops looks on awkwardly. They drive off, with Kyle reflecting that while Skynet may be gone, there are still unanswered questions, but they will continue moving forward. In the end credit scene and last seconds of the movie, we discover that Skynet still lives on underneath the rubble. Thank you all for staying until the end. I would love to know which Terminator movie was your favorite, and as always, stay awesome and take care.